Through the years, popular toy lines enjoyed success thanks to their connection to a long-lasting IP. The general interest in a type of fantasy that hyped for kids or just a fun gimmick everyone wanted to hang on to. You can't always predict the longevity or the profitability of popularity in pop culture. One year it could be the biggest thing and the next year scraping by to get your investment back. When it comes to launching toy lines, you should never pop all your eggs in one basket, and that's why so many second waves got cancelled. They were just testing the market. In this Ed's Retro Geek Out, we're ziplining through the macabre collection of unproduced prototypes and toy tribes you may have never even heard about. So be sure to subscribe for more 80s and 90s toy videos, and let's strap in for some toy history. With the inception of Masters of the Universe in the early 80s, the sword and sci-fi fantasy play was on the forefront of many kids and manufacturers. Galoob brought back Blackstar and Trident Faceables. Remco would create their own toy lines very similar to the body shape of He-Man. And then we're not even mentioning the endless amount of knockoffs Sun Gold overstayed their welcome with. With Masters of the Universe, Mattel would try to add in popular gimmicks and other hyping trends like dinosaurs, but by '88 they weren't taking any more hits with these Eternians. The market had dropped on the muscle-bound characters. Hasbro, however, did not get the memo. In 1990, they bundled up their ideas for Toy Fair and included a completely new toy line called Tribes. It seemed to be Hasbro's answer to Masters of the Universe, just 6 years too late. But let's dive in. Unleash the primal fury hidden deep within a strange and hostile world. Trapped in a savage land filled with conflict and turmoil, these powerful warriors battle it out, using crude, barbaric weapons to outwit and overpower their enemies. Getting the opponent's masks was everything here, and thanks to the battle mechanic and a spring-loaded action, it would translate well to the play pattern, as well as the collectability and interchangeability amongst characters. Press the button on each figure's backpack and his fists lash out. Strike the spring-loaded button on each figure's battle belt and his mask flies off. Kids can put themselves behind the masks of the Firehawk, Thunderbear, Wildcat, and Screaming Skull tribes, and fight for possession of the Tribal Tower. Tribes, only the strong survive. And you know me, if there's characters with skulls, I'm in. The battle mechanic immediately reminds you of the classic Rock'em Sock'em robot, with the only difference that the robots would have their heads pop up and over here, you had the masks ejecting when the target was impacted. The Rock'em Sock'em robots were introduced by the Marx Toy Company in 1964, and it would get many incarnations in the later years. Milton Bradley's Karate Fighters were similar, but added sounds, and they'd kick instead of box. And now back to Tribes. Recently, CAS Grading received the lion's share of the prototypes to get preserved and graded, finally showing us a 360 of these characters. Before, we had to rely on the Toy Fair magazine pictures. And here's the characters we would have gotten in the first wave. Spine Tingler, Tiger Paw, Sky Shadow, Young Bear, Grey Snake, Dark Hunter, Stone Bones, Iron Paw, Nightwing, Fast Cat, Hawk Keeper, and Bone Chiller. Each name more savage than the next, but within the name you could already tell which tribe they would belong to. Each tribe would get a couple characters. Looking at the figures, they perfectly match the feel and sculpts of the 80s fantasy toys made popular by the Masters of the Universe. The iconic 5.5 muscle body and the added sculpts in team with the characters' names. They did have to cut some articulation to accommodate for the gimmick's mechanism. The weapons it came with are big and in function of hitting the button for the characters' masks to pop off. And if we look a bit further, there's also some grapple hooks, but nothing out of the ordinary from what you would expect. On the back card, you could have gotten a little insight on the character, but also on the power that his mask holds. Now, the tribe's figures wouldn't go into battle alone. Like the Wildcat tribe would have the help from a masked animal. The Raging Cougar, tear into action with the sleek razor-fanged cat, included our two detachable spear weapons and a unique mask blaster mechanism. Firehawk tribe came forth with Blazing Hawk. The imposing bird of prey swoops down on the enemy, and when pressing the button on the saddle, the wings flap and bombs drop down. The Thunderbear tribe came in with the two-seater Crushing Grizzly, an earth-shaking powerhouse as he steamrolls his enemies. Stand him on his hind legs and use his front paws to crush his enemies. The saddle is removable, as well as the crossbow that launches claw clubs. The evil screaming skull has the snapping gator. Beware of the jaws of this bone-snapping monster, snapping jaws that open and close, and his tail spins like a whip to level his enemies. The drivers, however, don't seem to match any of the previous announced figures. They don't even seem to be repaints, but new figures that have a paint scheme working well with the animals. Perhaps they were first meant as pack-ins, but that idea was abandoned when they went to print to catalogs for Toy Fair. Perhaps these figures would have made it into Wave 2, and they actually have some cool sculpts in there. The toy line got introduced with a playset, the Tribal Tower. With 3 levels high, it features a rotating removable top equipped with crossbows and catapults. The second level has a trap door dropping the figures onto a base. Once down, the level can slide up and down as the claw-toothed cage spins around. In the underground dungeon, you can hold up to 4 figures, and on the rock formation, you can also display the captured masks. So with everything in place for a fantastic toy line, why was this not released? Some said the toys might have some tribal stereotype issues, but I'm afraid it just came down to the retailers not giving it enough interest or orders to greenlit the production. Perhaps a cartoon would have been a selling point. I actually would have loved seeing this in a Saturday morning form. But with no retailer interest and Motu turning full sci-fi by doubling down on space travel influences and going into leaner toys, these Thrive figures had to stay in the woods. Sometimes it all depends on the backstory and the world you create for your toys, and sometimes it would even allow for a fun gimmick.
Right?
Right.
The year was 1987, and Kenner would bring you in to enter a world of endless mountains, vast gorges, and furious winds. Welcome to the High Frontier, where a group of heroes called the Sky Commanders protect the land from the evil General Plague and his band of raiders. From their mobile base called the Vector Command, the Sky Commanders defend themselves from the raiders' attacks. Due to the treacherous conditions, it's difficult to fly, so they zipline on laser cables or on tracks, giving a fun zipline gimmick to the toys to play into the story. I wonder how much of these laser cables got tangled up beyond repair. But does it really beat the ball of string we so often use decorating our own playing areas, and we had countless characters hanging from? Well, maybe because the vehicles did have some fun features, and they had more planned for the next wave, but we didn't get it as it got cancelled as quick as the cartoon did. Which is too bad, because the systems we would have gotten had better connections thanks to the Skygrip adhesion system and the Trig clamps that would prevent your vehicles from crashing into the surface you had it locked onto. So you would have no more dents in the Davenport.
Davenport, the Chesterfield.
Apart from extra vehicles for both the Raiders and Sky Commander side, like the Scorpion Raider, Skyrod, Booster Raider, Swingshot, Spanner, Slam Hit, Hot Wire, High Fire, or Backlash. Where do they keep coming up with these names? These would give the kids the next level of Sky Commander toys as they knew it. They would also have a couple cool concepts that really piqued my interest. The reason these heroes fight is thanks to Theta 7, a radioactive element both sides are fighting to control.
All the Theta 7 we'll ever need.
Its rise from the deepest subterranean recesses of Earth itself gave birth to the new continent, the High Frontier as we know it, but it also brought with it wild and voracious, horrific creatures that inhabit it. These have mutated due to the long-term exposure to the Theta 7 radiation. Our heroes would encounter these often, and now you could have done so yourself with 2 awesome monsters they had planned for Wave 2. First up is the Crustacean Monster, which is a horrible mutated sea creature with mega claws laced in Theta 7, attracting raiders and Sky Commanders to come and secure it. But when they approach, it snaps close, engulfing its victims. Dark purple paint with its limbs and claws being red looks pretty cool on this one. The Collier Monster is a 2-foot long mutated snake with a coiling tail that can capture not just figures but also vehicles. When you squeeze him and his tongue lashes out, he can grab figures by their Sky Grip feature, and by doing so, capturing them. This actually reminds me a bit of some later released 90s Aliens action features. The prototype we see would have had chrome-like details on a black body with red arms and a green tail. But the one thing these monsters don't seem to have is the compatibility with the laser cables, but nonetheless these would have been the figures I would have been most after if they had gotten released. Now, the zipline gimmick wasn't anything new, but it was definitely taken to the next level for Sky Commanders. Neither has it been forgotten. Kenner even brought it back when they released toys for Batman the Animated Series, a toy line that was very heavy on Batman variants. Anything goes, even the zipline gimmick came back in High Wire Batman, with his quick escape cable wire. The toys could hook up thanks to a suction cup, and it had a retractable cable. Playmates turtles would have a whole line based around zip lines, called Z-Line. The Z-Line sets definitely had Sky Commander vibes, but were just a little bit more bodacious. But let's retract that Playmates zip line back into 1992 when they released the Addams Family to the action figure market. First released as cartoons in the New Yorker back in the late 30s, the Charles Addams creation would go on to be a popular TV show in the 60s, enjoying reruns up to the 90s and a Scooby-Doo crossover in the 70s. And with a well-performing live-action movie in 1991, the toys Playmates turned their macabre maker brains to would actually be the cartoon version. Oh wait, not the 70s one, but the 1992 animated series. We would get all of our favorite characters like Lurch, Uncle Fester, Gomez, Morticia, Granny, and Pugsley. The Playmates treatment that took the TMNT comic to the next level was applied to multiple IPs in the early 90s, and here once again we would see brightly colored and cartoon-accurate sculpts with fun accessories and an action feature. But even though the family faded in and out of popularity, they had to cut the cartoon after one season, so the toys based on it didn't receive any further green lights for production. On the back card they did however have plans, one that might be a little bit confusing for fans of the new Netflix series trying to get all the Wednesday action figures, as she was announced on the back card but destined for Wave 2.
People like me and you were different.
Wednesday would have gotten a similar treatment to the already released figures and probably had added in an action feature, but which one? It could either be the classic squeeze the legs and the arms move, or push the head, button, or lever on the back and the action feature will prevail. And maybe she's just tormenting us with the uncertainty of what could have been. Also unreleased is the Thing, who would have been a bigger figure than necessary, out of proportion compared to the others. And he was also featured a lot on accessories for the other figures, but the action figure version is really intriguing. You can see lines that would allow for articulation, but unfortunately this is the only picture we have right now. Finally, there's Cousin It, who got left out of production. He would have had the realistic hair gimmick, kind of like Grizzlor, but that's it. The plastic on this toy is nothing but a cone with a nose. But anything to get the family complete, I guess. Perhaps the Addams Family performed better on the home console market, where they had a multitude of releases in the early 90s. It seemed like action figures just wasn't the right market, or didn't bring in the cash needed to keep paying for the license. I'll always keep wondering how many second waves we've never ever seen pictures of, or how many toy lines like Tribes got abandoned even before they get featured into a Toy Fair magazine. One thing's for sure, the toy market in the 80s and 90s had their creativity in full swing, and there was always a second chance for a sculpt or a gimmick somewhere down the line for the next license they were bringing in and getting a treatment ready for the next Toy Fair. A big shout out to Blake Wright for helping out with this episode. He is the writer of the Toys That Time Forgot books and also works on Toy Collector the magazine. Pick it up if you haven't already. I'd also like to thank Rob from CAS Grading and collectors like Bobby 80s and Caleb's Collecting Corner, who you can find on YouTube, for providing images and prototypes and info on these toys. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more 80s and 90s toy history videos. And I wonder which one of these toy concepts would you have loved to have owned as a kid? Please leave it in the comments down below. If you'd like to do more, you can always leave a like on the video or check out my Patreon. That's going to be it for this video, and I hope to see you in the next. See you later. Bye.